Are y'all ready to head off the trail? I'm the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, and I'm ready to take you on an incredible journey right now. We welcome you to Off the Trails right here on the Spacedoutradio YouTube channel. If you guys haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. We'd really appreciate the love. Shout out to Bumblebee for our great intro music. We always appreciate that. You guys follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Space Out Radio. You guys can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress. And I have 2 live shows on my channel every week, in addition to this Spaced Out Radio gig over here. Every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern and every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's awesome. You guys, please check it out. And you can find all of my shows on my website, thecryptidhuntress.com. If you'd like to support what I do and follow along with my remote viewing data for my Thursday night show, y'all join my Patreon. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I would love to have you guys. Okay. I have a fantastic guest here at SOR tonight. I have Mike from Abnormal Investigations here in the studio with me. Don't forget that right after our show, After Hours has a great program set up for you tonight. Okay, so let's get to our guest. Stephan Michael investigates Bigfoot and other abnormal sightings. His popular YouTube channel, Abnormal Investigations, examines cases from across the country. Mike has had some scary Dogman experiences of his own, and he encourages people to share their stories with him, remaining anonymous. All right, this is going to be a really interesting show. Please help me welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight, Mike from Abnormal Investigations. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm excellent. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
I'm flattered to be here. I'm glad to be on your show. It's going to be exciting.
Well, thank you. Oh my gosh, I just love your YouTube channel. I came across you. I saw you on Bettina's show, and I mean, I've seen you all over the web actually, but I'm loving your channel. You are really diving deep into some really mysterious cases that I'm really interested in across the country, involving potentially a dogman or something. Just very mysterious cases of fatalities that just don't add up to being people killed by packs of wild dogs and things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I figured maybe we talk about some of those cases tonight. And also, I'd like to hear a little bit about you and your personal stories.
Oh, I grew up at my granny's house. It had cryptids ever since my mom was a child, so which would have been like the 50s, maybe like the late 40s. Growing up around it was nothing new for us. It was every day, every night. We just had rules. We knew when to be inside, when not to be outside. Had a lot of sightings. I mean, we see them fishing still yet today.
Really?
Yeah, and we was talking about that earlier. I was talking with D.A. Roberts on a show earlier, and they always we take our kids, and I have my little nephew. He's 8, and then my son's 10, and it seems it's always interested in the kids, and it always has been. Even when my mom was 13 years old, it was after her they always felt like the most. It followed her into her adulthood. Even to this day, when we go fishing, it will single her out. So I think that they will imprint on somebody, or I'm not sure, but I've always just been fascinated with them. We've had a lot of things happen. I do mostly cryptid. I've had paranormal stuff happen. I try to stay away from that. You're the tough one there. I run from those, but I just want to deal with the things I know I can stop. So.
Oh man, well, you're brave. You're very brave, and I guess it kind of, some of that has to stem with you growing up with this kind of strangeness in your own backyard with these cryptids, the dogmen. I mean, you were seeing what looked like coyotes walking on 2 legs near your home, right?
Yeah, I took my nephew and my son. We was in a drought. I think it was like 2 years ago. I done a video on it, and what it was is we was actually filming for another channel that I do, and we were walking along the lake. The lake had dried up, and it was very, very low, like lower than I've ever seen it. So we were out where the water normally was, and they were picking up. They call them seashells, little shells, and just little treasures. And we was walking. It was in the evening. It was nice out, and we're in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. And my nephew goes, "Mike, look, look, look." And I look, and a pack of coyotes runs out of the tree line. And that's nothing uncommon down there. And I'm like, it's coyotes. They're not going to bother us, it's just coyotes. And then we continue doing our thing. And then my son starts hitting me on the arm. He's like, "Dad, Dad, 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 Dad." And then they both start beating on me. And I look, and the coyotes are no longer on all fours. They're bipedal. One of them climbed a tree and was shaking the tree.
Oh my God. Wait, so a dog, it looks like a coyote climbed a tree.
Yeah.
That's not a coyote, I wouldn't think.
No.
That's wild.
No, it climbed up in the tree, and it was like stretched out. It was, where it was holding the limbs and its legs, and it was shaking the tree violently. And it was pretty wild. It scared the boys. And I told them, I said, "It's okay." We was probably about 500 yards from the truck. I said, "Let's start heading back toward the truck." And of course, I told them, "Don't run, because animals will chase if you run." And I try to treat them, like an animal. And so we start walking back. And as we're walking back, there's a tree line adjacent to us about 200 yards. The one, he's a little larger than the others. It's in the tree. He is larger than the others. The other ones start paralleling us, following us down the tree line, still bipedal. And the boys are freaking out. So I'm trying to keep the boys calm. And they paralleled us all the way to the vehicle. When we got to the vehicle, of course, I had an AR in the truck. And I had my sidearm on me. So I went from my sidearm to my AR. And when I grabbed the AR, they dropped down to all fours, and their tails are up, and they just run into the woods like a bunch of coyotes.
Okay. Could you make out what their paws or their hands look like? I mean, if that one had climbed a tree, would it have had hands like a human, or could you tell?
It would have had to have hands. The trees that are down around the lake, I don't know if you're familiar with locusts. They're a locust tree. They have long thorns on them. There's not a lot of branches on them. So you would have to have, in my opinion, you'd have to have an opposable thumb to be able to grab those limbs, to be able to pull yourself up. And then the way it was spread out, it was spread out, and it was shaking the limbs. So it was able to grab the limbs to be able to shake them. So, I mean, and they didn't look, they weren't this muscle thing that everybody talks about. They weren't, this weightlifter looking thing. They just looked like a 4 to 5 foot coyote walking on its hind legs. Now it didn't look uncomfortable for them to be able to do it. You could tell they were comfortable being on 2 legs, but it makes me wonder if they run on 4 legs more than they do 2 legs, because when we first seen them, they were on, 4 legs. And then when they left on 4 legs. So I don't know if they maybe stand on their hind legs to intimidate, to be able to see better, to be up higher, to see you further, or to try to wind you to get your smell. I'm not sure why they would do that.
Wow. Do you think that they recognized you guys? Like, if, that was in your territory there, and you were probably in their territory. Was there familiarity?
I think so. Yeah. I've grew up there all my life. And like I said, I fished there and hunted there with my grandpa growing up, my mom and them when they had troubles. So it's an area that we've always went to. It's there's nothing around, nothing. You could scream, yell, shoot a gun, whatever. Nobody's going to hear you.
Wow. Bettina's in the chat. Hey, Bettina. What's up, girlfriend? Okay. So you had mentioned earlier about people being marked, perhaps. And you said that some of these things had an affinity towards your mother. Okay. So kind of tell me the history behind that.
My mom, where it all started with her mostly, is her mom and dad had went and bought groceries, and they had 8 kids. My grandpa was a logger. He was gone most of the week, so my granny raised 8 kids by herself at home most of the time. And they had left her in the car to carry in groceries, and then they were going to wake her up and then bring her inside after they got everything done. My mom woke up before they had got all the groceries done, and of course she woke up in the dark, and so she gets out and then runs to the house. The house had large concrete steps that went up to an outside porch that was covered in plexiglass, and then you would go through the front door into the house. When
Mhm.
she went up the steps, it had its head, she said, about like this on the steps, and she said it looked just like a werewolf. And she said it looked at her, and its eyes and all were moving. She said you could tell, and she said it scared her so bad she screamed, and ran in the house. Ever since then, even into her adulthood, whenever my granny in the later years had a stroke, and this is jumping way ahead of everything that's happened, but even in the later years, it was so bad. My uncle came down, and he was a welder, and he welded bars through the back of the house because he was so afraid it was going to come in and get my mom.
I don't blame him. I would have too. I actually would have put bars on the windows too.
You know,
That should
we
be.
we had dowel rods, and the old wooden windows in the old houses, they would
Mhm.
put dowel rods in the top of them, so when you go to raise them, they would hit the top, and you couldn't
Mhm.
raise them. So that's what they would do, and they had, instead of uh, we had blankets over the windows, so they couldn't see our shadows. Thick blankets were hung over the windows. I mean, we actually barricaded in every night.
I don't blame you. I am a proponent of blinds and curtains. Okay. I mean, a lot of people have these encounters with dogmen and even Bigfoots looking in their windows at night, and aliens. I mean, I had a family here in Georgia that was having issues with their kids possibly being abducted at night, and they were having aliens peeking in their windows. And I have pictures that someone sent me of it from their house. I was thinking, why do they not have curtains? That's like my go-to question. Just why do you not have curtains up? But this is real. My guest last week, Adam with the International Dogman Project, Adam Davis, he and his family had some issues with dogmen looking in their window and beating on their house. Now, did that happen at your home? Were they hitting the walls and things like that?
Yeah, they would pound on the walls, and then we had the old wooden siding, like the 1x4s on the outside, the old time, and it would take
Mhm.
its hand, and you could hear it like go, clock, 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 clock down down the wood. And I was laying one night. My granny was bedfast because she had a stroke. She was paralyzed on
Mhm.
one side of her body, and I was staying with my mom one night because I wasn't letting her stay alone, and I slept in the bed that my mom normally would have slept in. I don't know. You probably know what a water cooler is. You know what it's not an
Uh-huh.
air conditioner with the old water coolers.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what we had. We had the old water coolers, and I was laying in the bed, and the old water cooler was even with the bed, and you could see out where the thing that spun. You could see underneath it, and you could see the yard light. And I was laying there, and I was looking out, and it was probably, I don't know, midnight, and I was laying there, and all of a sudden the light goes away. So I knew something was standing in front of the water cooler. And then my mom's name is Kay. Right through the water cooler, it goes Kay, but it was an animalistic, like a demonic voice. It was not a human voice. And I jumped up, grabbed my 30-30, and ran out the back door. And by the time I got outside, it was gone.
Oh
But
my.
whatever it was, it did end up killing my dog.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about that. Oh my gosh. So I've heard before that dogmen can speak English. Say words. Maybe not like having full conversations with humans or something, but they can kind of talk a little bit.
I've heard them, and my granny had heard them. Never spoke a sentence. It was always single words. And mostly names. Now she had a bell that she would ring at night, when she would need help, or
Mhm.
need a drink or something. And one night I was staying down there with my mom, and the bell would ring, and we would go in there. She's asleep. Go back to the front room. The bell would ring. Go back in there. Granny was asleep. So finally, we found out whatever it was had climbed the tree outside of Granny's window and was ringing something that sounded like her bell and was watching us walk past the window to Granny, and it was sitting in the tree watching us. Yeah,
Tricksters. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
So they have a level of intelligence that far exceeds what you would think, like a dog would have if you wanted to equate these things to dogs or a coyote or a wolf.
There's a story. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen the video I done? It's called like 50 years later or something like it's something 50 years.
I don't think so. I don't know. I might have. I don't
Um,
remember that.
back when my mom was little and they was having all this trouble, um, a lot of people criticized them. And
Mhm.
there was this guy that lived in town, big tough fighting guy. He'd whoop just about everybody, wasn't scared of nobody. And he's like, I'll come down, take care of whatever it is for you. And Granny told him, she said, you don't want to do that. He came down one night and mom said they were all playing in the house and everything. And of course it started, about the same time every night, started beating on the back door. He jumps up, runs outside and runs around to the back of the house. Well, whenever he runs to the back of the house, he comes back. They said, white as a sheet, and just falls on the couch. He never told anybody what he's seen. Just about 2 years ago, I reached out to him to try to see if he would tell me. He wouldn't tell me at first. He did end up getting COVID, and
Okay.
while he had COVID, he wrote me a letter telling me what he had seen that night. And I read the letter on my video. It was hard to read because he was a good friend. I knew him all my life. But he said when he walked around the corner, pretty much to sum it up, of Granny's house, he saw a creature that looked like a werewolf, he said. And my granny would dump scraps out the back door, which is a bad idea. Don't do that. And
No.
it was standing there eating. And he said it was eating through the side of its mouth. And it had the food all over it. And he said it turned sideways, tilted its head, and looked at him. And it said, hello.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my,
He said,
it probably that they probably liked your grandmother. Okay, if she was leaving out scraps and stuff like that, I would think that that's probably why
well,
they stuck around though.
well,
Oh my gosh.
she thought it was going to get her one night. She was sitting in her house and had the front door opened, and out on the sidewalk we had big shade trees over the sidewalk, and they had a huge, yard light. So you could kind of see through the shade trees. The light would kind of filter through just good enough. You could see somebody standing there. And
Yes.
it was standing there one night, and Granny was sitting in the house looking through her front door, through the porch, and out onto the sidewalk, and it's standing out there doing this at her with its hand, and her name was Helen, and it was going, Helen, and kept
Oh,
saying her name over and over and over.
that
And
is terrifying. Okay, that
yeah,
that is probably more terrifying than just about anything I could think of.
it was bad. I mean, we cried. I mean, when we were kids, we cried down there. We were so scared. I mean, me and my cousins would just be terrified.
Yeah. I would cry too. I wouldn't want to stay there. I would beg my grandmother to move at that
It,
point. That's
it was
really scary.
it was terrible. But back then they were a poorer family. They had 8 kids.
Mhm.
Grandpa was a logger. They had put all their money they had into that property, and they raised their food. They had their garden. They done the canning. I mean, they lived off the land, and they really didn't have a choice. That was how they survived. And there was
Yeah.
nights, man. You go to the bathroom, and the old houses when you walk, the floors would creak, and
Yes.
we would try not to creak the floors. We would like tippy
Uh-huh.
toe. And I got to the back door one night, and I was so quiet, and I was so proud of myself. And then the floors, creaks, and then it hits the back door and starts wiggling the doorknob. And I just, you turn and run. It just terrifies you because you're afraid, man, what if that door opens? What am I going to see?
Wow. What do you think that it was just trying to scare you, or do you think it would have come inside the house?
It did come in the house. Uh,
Do you think that it had any intention of hurting you?
I think it would have. I think if it would have had the opportunity. I think they're smarter than what people give them credit for. Also, I think they know that if they can get somebody out alone, somebody that's vulnerable in a bad situation, and they can hurt or kill you, and they're going to blame it on hogs or pigs or something. I don't think they're going to come in your house and do it. That brings too much. They're going to be hunted. They know they're going to be hunted. They're smart.
Yeah.
They're not dumb. And I think that the night it came in, my aunt, of course, the little girls would sleep with my granny, and then the boys would sleep in the other room.
Mhm.
She woke up, my aunt, and she said she looked at the doorway, and she saw it standing in the door inside the house at night.
Oh, God.
And she was scared, so she covered up her head. And then she said she laid there a little while, and she uncovered her head, and now it's standing over the bed, looking at Granny and the kids. So she said, I covered my head back up, and it walked around to the end of the bed, and it ran its hand across the bottom of her feet as it walked into the boys' room, and then it went out the back.
Oh my God. How did it get inside? The door was open, or did it come in a window?
They found out later my uncle was
Oh my
about
God.
15 or 16, I guess, and his room was in the back. They had added on to the house, which was the room was smaller than the rest of the house because it was an add-on. And he
Okay.
was smoking, and he would leave the window open to smoke so nobody knew he
Oh
was
my
smoking.
God.
So it came in the window.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
oh my God, no. That's terrifying with children in the house. That's really
Yeah.
scary. Well, okay, so this all sets the tone of you still having these, maybe not so many experiences now, perhaps, but you are really interested in the subject of all of these people all over the world. Okay, mostly in the United States, North America, and in Europe. I mean, I've gotten at least one report from people I know in the UK who have had a potential Dogman attack out there, because there's been a string of a lot of deaths that have been blamed on unspecified or unknown animals.
Yes.
Sometimes it's packs of wild dogs, and I've talked about this many times on my shows. And if some of the information doesn't add up, now tell the audience a little bit about your background, as far as you investigating and your law enforcement and things like that. Let everybody kind of know your background and how you got really interested in doing these investigations.
Of course, I grew up in it. When I was 18 years old, well, I decided even younger. We had a police officer in our hometown. We lived in a small town. It was 4 blocks by 4 blocks, and the police officer that was there, his name was Raymond Coffey. He got me into wanting to be in law enforcement. He'd let me ride with him, play the flashlight, things like that. As I got older, I turned 18. I got my cleat license. I worked behind a desk until I was 21, until I was old enough to go on the streets. I went on the streets, worked with them for a while. I worked Oklahoma. A lot of people don't know this, but Oklahoma has what we call, it's an open seaport. And a lot of people think Oklahoma has an open seaport, and yeah, we do. It's the Mississippi River feeds into the Verdigris, and we actually have 2 locks. And I had a Coast Guard security clearance. I was the captain over the largest vault in Oklahoma. We done military holdovers. I was then moved from there and went and I done security in another town. Worked with law enforcement. I got my SOT training, special operations and tactics. I worked with juvenile services. I have my federal terrorist response training. I'm a terrorist response officer. Got a lot of training. Acts 1, 2, 3, 4. I was the youngest captain ever to make it in the department, and then I was an investigator for 8 years. And I just started applying what I had learned working with people and children and everything I'd seen with the Coast Guard. I started applying it to cryptids, and I based my information as if I was building a case for court. I always kind of went by the Bible. If you build something on the sand, you don't have anything. But if you build it on the rock, at least if things fail, you still have a rock, a basis to build your case from. And if we start out speculating, then we're only going to end in speculation. And I think that we have to speculate because there's no experts. But we need to put as much truth in it as we can to be able to get to the closest, I guess, hypothesis of what it would be. It's just nobody knows. It's still a guessing game, and we're all trying to get to the same place. And I'm open to everybody's theories because nobody knows. I mean, nobody knows until we have a body. And I've made another guy mad at me that has a channel, but until we have a body, in my opinion, there can be no experts.
Yeah. Well, you have the credentials, you have the experience, you have the drive to want to look into these cases. But first and foremost, in my opinion, you have a big heart, and you really just want, I feel like you want to help people too, to find out what really happened. And I think that's why I do what I do too. When I do shows like this, I just want we just want the truth with a lot of this stuff, because we are lied to so much in society today.
Just like
Everything.
the Girl Scout case when I took it on. I really had to think about it before I done it. The way I am is whenever I take a case, I live and breathe that case. I've always done that, and I knew if I took that case, it was going to take times away from my family. And but then you weigh it and you think about it. Those little girls deserve a voice. They deserve justice, and their mom and dads, they deserve rest. They deserve peace, and that's why you do it. I know we can't bring the little girls back. They're in a lot better place, but what we can do is we can protect their legacy, who they was, and give them the integrity that they deserve. And I think that's the most important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I have a lot of respect for you and for you putting this out there. I mean, this is tough to do. It's also tough just speaking out on these things. There's a vested interest in keeping these things quiet. And I mean, there's a chance that maybe some of these are actual, just regular dog attacks and stuff like that. But with your background in investigations, you see there are way more anomalies than there should
I
be.
got I got my first phone call that threatened me over a case, and
Mhm.
I made it public to everybody because I wasn't sure who had called. I uh, I used a simple formula that we learn while you're a detective or you're looking at a case, and I was comparing the Nephilim to the blood of Noah's wife, uh, bringing the blood over after the blood been tainted after the flood to show they were here before and after the flood. Noah's blood was pure, but it never said that his sons' wives wasn't. And I started looking at the Nephilim, and I took a comparison chart that we use, which you can plug in numbers, and it will give you an approximate height, weight, and everything of a creature or a person. And it wasn't coming out right. It just wasn't coming out right. So I went back and I used what the zoo uses to estimate the size of creatures. And if you plug all of that in, it's right on the money. And I
Okay.
done a show on that. And I received a phone call from a guy, and he says, "I think you need to stay with the theory, of using, Gigantopithecus." And I said, "But I don't believe that." And he said, "Well, I think it would be better for you to go that way instead of the way you're going." He said, "Leave the Nephilim alone."
Wow. Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, I
Well,
kind of took
there's
a
a lot
threat.
of different viewpoints on all this stuff. I mean, we all don't agree and see eye to eye on everything, but I respect everybody's opinions on it and stuff,
Right.
but the truth is we just don't know. But when you start connecting the dots, and putting your heads together with other people, like, not just like-minded people, people with good ideas on this. Somebody has a little bit more information than you do. It
Right.
helps.
A good teacher is always a good student.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Wow. Yeah. So tell me what you have found. And okay, I'd like to hear about a case or two tonight, if you don't mind. I would love that. I know our audience would love that. And then towards the end of the show tonight, I'd like for you to tell me if you, or maybe even now, have you come across patterns on these cases and like things that are the same, I mean, as far as even cover-ups go, or wounding on these people, or whatever it is? Let me know if you found patterns.
Yeah, there's patterns.
Okay.
Some of the patterns found on the victims that uh, I have two lists that I keep. I have survivors and I have fatalities. And
Okay.
on the fatalities, it is always the front portion of the throat is removed, uh, which would account for, I believe, even back to the Dennis Martin, James McNeilis, the Godsey, all the younger kids. Why nobody heard a scream is because they couldn't. Um, and that, yeah, another thing that I found is I don't think that they will take a child on the first time unless it's just a huge opportunity. I think they will stalk a person and wait for the right time. As far as they will follow you, I think once you have an encounter with them, and I've always believed this, I think women are at a higher risk than men. There's an attachment that they have with
Mhm.
women. Almost every woman I talk to, they always say, it always follows me. It knows where I'm at. It beats on the house. It whistles. You talk to guys, and guys are mostly, I seen it out by the barn. I saw eye shine and it ran away. So it's like there's a distance it keeps with the males and then the females. And I just, they, without getting too gruesome, I talked to a canine handler, a good friend of mine, and dogs do not prefer the taste of human. Okay, we're the last thing they want to eat. There's too many other things they would rather eat in the environment. There's rabbits, there's rats, there's easy prey. They don't want to eat us. These kids that have this amount of damage, they have this amount of damage done, is done in such a short time with such massive damage. The bite marks are so large. People compare them to a shark bite. Um, yeah, it's just, it doesn't make sense. And, you know, something that can take and cut a pig's head off and stick it on a fence post,
Yeah,
that's not a coyote.
no. That's a recurring theme that I'm finding, and a lot of the guys that I've had on my shows, they'll send me pictures that I can't show on my shows because we'll get our channel shut down. But it's of deer heads and horse heads and all sorts of stuff that are like decapitated and stuck on fence posts and things like that. And it's just, I can't see humans doing that. Now, not to say a human wouldn't do it. We've got some crazy people in the world, you know,
Right.
but the
I
chances
found,
are, I don't know.
I found a whole herd of pigs I took pictures of that I found down by where I found like a looks like a house they built or something. Every
Mhm.
pig was cut completely up from the stomach all the way to the head, and there was nothing inside of them. They were totally empty.
Wow.
Nothing eats like that.
No, that's interesting. Did they
And it
have
was
blood? Like, was the blood still in them, or was the blood gone?
no, they were just an empty carcass. And if a
Really?
coyote eats something, they'll eat through the through the hide, and and these were just like if a hunter was to catch one and you were to to process it, to gut it, that's and they was all laying just all around like they were just attacked.
Wow.
And you know
Okay, that's really odd. I mean, and I've heard of dogmen going in to people that have dogs put in pens. Like, I don't know if it's breeders or hunters or I'm not sure what, but all the like German shepherds are all dead and blamed on. They believe dogman did it. Dogman. So you were mentioning about children. So children seem to be targeted, perhaps, with some of these cases that you've looked into. The elderly and children, I've noticed. Okay, because that lady, and someone in chat, I think it was Glenn, asked if I was referring to the woman in Scotland. Yes, that was the case I was referring to. I was asked to actually look into that remote viewing. I didn't get around to doing it. I don't believe it's been a while. I can't remember. I don't think I did that one. But she had left her car. She had a flat tire or something happened to her car. And so she left her car. Oh, she didn't, she called somebody to come help her, like AAA. When the AAA got there, she was gone. Her belongings were in her car and she was found about a mile down the road in a field and her body had been eaten on. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And that seems to be kind of something similar. Brenda Hamilton, let's just say, let's put that one out there. That's another case that you really looked into.
Yeah, it's funny that they took her to the hospital and she survived a couple of days. And in the report, I thought was pretty. I go through the reports, and part of my job when I worked was I had to approve every report that came across my desk. So I know what to look for. And there was something that caught my attention right off as they said that whenever they questioned the victim, she was uncooperative. that tells me that she was able at that time to be able to communicate. Because
Okay.
normally, a person that's in shock doesn't communicate. So an officer would have no reason to say that she was uncooperative. Now we can speculate and say that uncooperative means that they asked her, was it a coyote that done this to you? And she says, no, it was a werewolf. And then, there was a call, and I don't know if you knew about this, but 3 days prior to Miss Hamilton being killed, a neighbor had called 911 and reported a black bipedal creature walking through the field near the area she was killed. But the 911 operator took it upon herself, which she should not have done, and said it was a misidentification of an animal, and she called it a panther when she made the call out. It's not her job to do that, but she done it anyways, and of course it was never brought up. Well, now that she's done that, and people have dug into it, and they found out, oh, there was a bipedal, black creature there. Now they're saying, well, it probably was a panther. And then you got your own wildlife department saying there's never been a panther here. So I mean, everybody starts contradicting each other when they're trying to hide something. They can never keep their story straight.
You would know best because you have interrogated people before, most likely.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something very interesting is that my mother lives in I'd say it's a small town, okay, here in Georgia. And she still swears that she saw what she thought was a black panther in her yard one night. And she's seen it on more than one occasion. Okay. But after I was talking to her about some of these cases tonight, we had dinner earlier this evening, and we were talking about how it might not have been a black panther. What if there was some sort of like a dogman creature in town, and it's not totally out of the question to have these creatures in cities. They're not just out in the country.
Oh no, no, no. If you even look at all the reports of the dogman, and look what color people are saying they are. They're black.
Black. Yeah. Wow.
And I mean, my mom, I even asked her after I started looking at it, I asked her, I said, what color was that thing you seen? And mom's like, well, it was black.
The better to hide in the dark, my dear. you know.
Well,
Wow.
and that brings back, my friend I talked to, I consult with a friend of mine, Steve, a lot. He's a very intelligent person. And we was talking about, in the nursery rhymes, there has to be a little bit of truth in each one of those.
Yeah.
What was the bad wolf? The three little
There,
pigs.
yeah. I tell you, there's truth in all those nursery rhymes. It's almost like somebody's trying to warn us. But are we listening?
And they're dark.
Yeah, and we actually are shown the truth in all these movies today and all the movies over the years, and it's all packaged like it's a big joke and it's funny. And this is not funny. This is not a laughing matter when it comes to stuff, because it's almost like we're preconditioned to think, oh, that's not true. And that's why a lot of people who do research, a lot of people who have experienced Dogman, Bigfoot, aliens, any kind of cryptid, the Kustica, you name it. A lot of people don't come forward and don't go public because we're ridiculed and made fun of, because that's what we're taught to do growing up, until we break out of that matrix.
Like the case I'm working on right now. People have always said I'm hard-headed. I've always had a set of guidelines. But I'm open to anything. And this case I'm working on now has challenged my beliefs on how I thought things to operate. Because I have to be careful that I don't give too much, because a human that bites somebody, okay, if a human takes a bite out of your arm, which is going to be really hard to do, it doesn't happen a lot. It's almost uncommon that a human will have enough bite force to take a chunk out of your arm, okay? But say they do, you're going to be able to go to the doctor. They're going to know that's a human bite. But what if somebody was changing at a seance and they bit somebody and the doctor said that's an animal bite?
Hmm.
That starts
Interesting.
that starts challenging my beliefs, because see,
Yeah.
I didn't think they could change. But when you have people that are seeing professionals because of things they have seen, and they're breaking down and they're coming to you, there has to be some truth.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
scary.
It is scary. Now, in my mind right now, I'm thinking werewolves. Okay, werewolves and Dogman. Do you think that some of these attacks, okay, because I know you're looking into these things, and you may not want to say, well, it's absolutely a Dogman, but you're seeing there's something abnormal about these fatalities and the wounding on these people and these children. Okay.
Well,
Uh, would you think maybe some of them could be werewolves, some of them could be Dogman? I mean, is that kind of what your conclusion has become,
my my
or do you
old
have
belief.
a conclusion?
Well, yeah, okay. I my grandpa was a full blood Cherokee, and the dog man, the werewolf, uh, they don't like, or he did not like, I should say, those words. He said those were white people words for what it was. He said it's a googway. Okay,
Oh,
they're all the same. He said. He said picture a poodle and a Rottweiler. They all look different all the way to the Rottweiler. All dogs are different colors. Snouts are different. Builds are different. He said they all come from the same thing. And I said, what about changing from human to one of those? He said, that is not a werewolf. He called it I can't, it was like, he talked about the skilly and the demons and good magic, bad magic. And, he said they have always been. They've been here as long as we have, and then you have the Bigfoot. And he said, they used to trade with the Bigfoot a long time ago, he said. And the Bigfoot started eating their children and stealing their women. And,
wow. Stealing the women and the children too, probably. I mean, there's stories that go way back.
yeah, he
Women and
said
children.
they would eat the kids and then mate with the women.
Mhm.
And that's what caused, I guess, the war between them. And they said they
Mhm.
went further into the woods because the Indians, he said, started acquiring rifles from the white man, which gave the Indians an advantage over them. So they chased them deep into the woods, and that's why they got the name Sasquatch, the shy ones, because they chased them into the woods.
Oh, wow. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. Have you had Sasquatch activity on the property that you grew up on?
yeah, yeah. They measured one footprint that they found one night. It was 18 inches long, and I believe it was like 9 inches wide. It was a big print. But the Sasquatch never. You knew he was there, but it wasn't like the other things. I mean, we knew he was there because you could hear like the breathing.
Mhm.
Like how a coffee pot will perk. It would
Yes.
kind of sound like that when it would breathe, but it wouldn't do the things that the Googway, the Dogman, or the Werewolf, whatever it was. It was more sinister. It would. I can't go into that story. I don't want to get your channel shut down. I'll tell
Okay.
you more about it. Just
Thank
remind me to
you.
tell you. Yeah, just remind me to
Okay.
tell you. The things that it done I'll put it like this. It would make you worry about the safety of a female outside. It done
Mm.
some really grotesque things
Okay.
that happened at the house. Yeah.
Oh
And
my gosh.
it was a huge concern. Yeah.
Okay.
My granny, we called the sheriff several times. There was police reports. And they went to the neighbors, which the neighbors lived a mile away. And the sheriff was like, "Oh yeah, they're having the same problems."
Okay.
And yeah,
Have you ever retaliated against the dogmen and what they were doing to your home?
I shot one. Me and my cousin.
Mhm.
We decided one night my granny had a stroke and it was scaring her and it was upsetting her. And I was probably 16, somewhere around there, 16, 17. And we came up with this idea that my mom was going to stay at my granny's that night. So we only lived about probably half a mile from her house. And we said, well, we're not going to drive down there tonight. We're going to walk and try to catch this thing. So I had an old single shot 410 and he brought a 22 semi-automatic. And we cut out through the fields with no flashlights. And there was some uh, oil containers up by my granny's where they was pumping oil. And we climbed up on top of those because we could see her house from a high advantage. And with the yard light up there and everything, we could see the shadow. So we were waiting to see it so we could run up to the house. Well, we never seen it, but the dog started barking. So we ran up to the house. And when we did, on the other side of the house was the hog pasture and a pond that had cattails in it. When we went into the cattails, of course, we probably shouldn't have, but we did. We thought we were bulletproof. And we
Oh
went
my
into the
God.
cattails and it ran up on us through the cattails. Now, it was not like what people say. It was not this large, big thing again. I always explained it as it looked like a bear cub running on two legs. It was,
Oh wow.
bulky, but not nothing huge. It was, maybe a little shorter than me. I'm 5'10", maybe about my height, somewhere around there. It was nothing huge. And I shot it point blank. I shot it. And my cousin
Mhm.
shot it. And it failed. It just collapsed.
Mhm.
And my first thought was, damn, we killed it.
Mhm.
So I start reloading my gun and it jumps up and it runs over behind the chicken house. So we reload our guns. Of course, my mom and them heard the gunshot. They come outside, they start the cars, they got the light shining down at us and everything. Well, they're yelling at us, get up by the car, get up by the car. We're like, no, 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 we got it, we got it. They get us up by the cars because they're throwing a fit and everything. And you can hear it behind the chicken house growling, like running its fingers down the tin of the chicken house. So they call my dad and my uncle. My uncle was in Vietnam. My dad was a big man. He was like 6'8", 350 pounds. So they come down there and they get out and they're like, what do you got? Come on. And then they hear it growling. And my uncle's like, okay, get the kids in the house. Well, before we got in the house, behind the chicken house, it took off running. And they seen that it had something over its back. And they thought that it probably had a pig because my grandpa raised pigs. And it's like, oh, it got a pig. But later on, when we went and looked in the cattails, there was blood all in the cattails. And then up behind the building where it had set and scratched on the building, there was a large pool of blood, that dark, thick, arterial, you know, organ hit. It was a good hit, blood. And then my uncle said, you know what? He said, I bet that wasn't a pig it had. I bet there was more than one. That was a juvenile, and the adult grabbed the juvenile, and that's what you seen over its back when it was running off. He
Oh
said, if you would have went behind that chicken house, that big one was waiting on you. It was trying
wow.
to lure us back there. Yeah, that was his thoughts.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we talk about. I do a lot of field research with my team, and we've discussed this plenty of times. If you were to shoot one, there's going to be a whole bunch of them waiting in those woods for you after you shoot it. Okay,
That that
they don't travel by themselves. There's going to be more. And did the activity ramp up after that?
the next night, it killed my dog and cut the head off of
Oh,
a pig and stuck it on the fence post.
oh my God, I am so sorry.
Yeah, I had a Rottweiler, big. He was like 160
Oh,
pounds, and
oh
the
wow.
way it killed it, the veterinarian had never seen anything like what it had done. It had a right below his anus was a hole about like that, it looked like a broom handle, and it was blunt, whatever it was. The veterinarian said, and it had shoved it into him, into his
Oh,
stomach, and they
oh,
tried to doctor him, but it he died
oh
from
my
it.
God, I am so sorry. So they retaliated basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, I am so sorry.
yeah, they and they people say you know you're safe and you think about camping and stuff, but these things would turn the door handles. You could be laying in the front room watching TV and hear the door handle, and you look up because you keep the TV so low because you're scared, and you could see the door handles in them old houses It was trying the door.
Ooh. Oh my God.
And then you could hear it put its hand on the windows and push on the windows. And you could hear, the piece of wood hit, and it would terrify us. I'm not going to lie. There was nights we didn't want to stay there. I would call Dad and say, come and get me. I don't want to stay here. It was bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is really bad. What is it like today at that home? Do y'all still live there?
My aunt actually lives there now. After my granny had passed away, my mom, left the home place and all the girls, and then my aunt lives there. After my mom left and my granny passed away, she said nothing has happened there to this day.
Nothing. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, your grandmother was feeding them, though, kind of.
But if I take mom fishing, like if I was to take her fishing, say tonight, it'll find her. It always does. I mean, not every time, but when we go, it'll go down there. It'll start making baby cries. It'll start sounding like a cow. It'll sound like a baby kitten. And then it'll start throwing pebbles at the kids. It'll start throwing little sticks. We've had it laugh. We've heard it laugh. Yeah. It's eerie. That's
so scary. And it said your mother's name and your grandmother's name, and I don't know. That's a lot. So you're in Oklahoma. I've heard about this happening all over the country with different reports from different people. My guest last week, Adam Davis, he's up in Ohio. There's a lot of dogmen up there. I don't know. It seems like, do you think they're living in caves? Like, where do you think these things are living?
We have a lot of coal mines. We're right in the middle of coal mines where I'm at. A lot of coal mines. And we have hills, and we have bluffs and caves and dens. We have swamps, a huge lake. They could be anywhere down in there.
Wow. Do you from what Adam was saying last week, they really focus on areas that have a water source, like a river, and livestock. So you guys had livestock out there on that property.
Yeah. And we have a lot of like rabbits and stuff down in here. It's full of whatever. We got wild pigs, whatever they would need is there. I mean, it's very secluded. I mean, if you went down there and got in trouble, where we live is so secluded at midnight, we don't even have a cop on duty in the whole county. I mean, there's no help. Okay,
speaking of which, what do you guys report this to the authorities when things like this happen, or what is the response? And let's talk a little bit. We got a few more minutes tonight. Let's talk about the government connection and the government cover-ups that are going on.
We did report it to the sheriff's department when it would happen. They would come out, and of course the deputies would tell us, they'd say, "Oh, we know there's weird stuff out here. We know." But they weren't allowed to document it as that. They had to document it as a public nuisance, as a teenager or a prowler, and but there was an incident. It is on record. The sheriff did do a report saying that he did shoot at a Bigfoot in the loft of a barn, which was just a few miles from my granny's. He did do that, the sheriff. But most of the time, they even told me when I worked, you cannot write down it's a cryptid. It's a prowler. It's a teenager, public nuisance, disorderly conduct. Because when you put it on paper, it happened. The old saying, if it didn't happen, if it ain't on paper, it didn't happen. So I mean, there is a protocol. There is a protocol.
So there's a protocol for law enforcement to kind of a roundabout way cover it up a little bit.
Like at my desk, if an officer was to go and write a report and it was to come across my desk, part of my job was to approve his report before it would go before the judge the next day. That was my job. If it was to hit my desk and he had Sasquatch, Bigfoot, or something like that, he would have to come in and revise his report to a prowler.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. It's good to know. I mean, should people even call these things in when they see them to the authorities?
I think so. And the reason I think so is not necessarily because they're going to believe what you're telling them. if you do call it in, don't tell them it's a Bigfoot. If you're afraid for your life, call it in as a prowler. They will send an
Okay.
officer out. He will spotlight your house. It's going to cause whatever it is to leave. You know, try to think of it more at first as a safety issue. Safety's number one, and just that's the way I would do it. I'd say, hey, I got a prowler out here. Could you send a deputy out, and then let them come out and have the encounter or whatever they have to do.
Oh my God. Well, should you at least warn them after they get there? Say, I think it's a Bigfoot or a Dogman. Should you, or just let them deal with it?
Well, I mean, you can, but then you run the risk of, well, oh, such and such is going to call us tonight, and she's going to have a monster over there, and
Oh, okay. It's okay. I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So, it's good to have this protocol down though for people, especially people who have ongoing experiences and they're scared to go tell the authorities about it.
right. Yeah, it's a prowler.
It's a prowler. All right. Well, it's a prowler. Mike, this has been amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us tonight. It means a lot. I'm honored that you came on the show tonight. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, I was honored to be here with you. You're amazing. You do a great job. You do a good job. It's a great show. I was glad to be part of it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think you have a wonderful YouTube channel. Tell people where they can find you. I've got it on the screen.
Yeah, just Abnormal Investigations on YouTube. It's simple. I try to keep everything simple. I think I'm the only one out there with that name. But
yes,
that's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well, everybody, please go subscribe to Abnormal Investigations on YouTube. Mike, please come back and hang out with me some more, and let's talk some more Dogman and strange abnormal investigations, please.
It would be a pleasure.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much. I hope you get a whole bunch more. You got a ton of subscribers already. You don't need my help. I tell you what.
Oh no. But, you do great. You do a good job.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Well, we will see you next time. Okay. You have a great night, Mike. Thank you.
You too.
All right. All right, everybody. Let's see. Don't forget that right after this show, After Hours has an incredible program set up for you guys for the next 3 hours. Okay. Tomorrow night, I have Anthony Pitbull Canatella coming on from DA Ex Machina. We're going to be talking about Bigfoot and all the other cryptids. I can't wait, you guys, but I am headed off the trails. I'm the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones. You guys, please be sure to join me on my daytime show next week. Join me tomorrow night, first of all, but join me on my daytime show. I have a family friend who was assaulted by rock apes while he was fighting in Vietnam during the war. He's coming on my show to talk about his experiences. So I hope you guys will join me for that. I will see y'all tomorrow night. Y'all have a great night. Good night.